New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good evening, and welcome to the Miracle of Prosperity here on the New Thought Media Network. I'm your host, the Reverend Dr. Jim Webb. I serve as the senior minister of the Tacoma Metaphysical Chapel in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I'm also the author of a number of books on prosperity, including The Soul of Prosperity, Prosperity from A to Z, 30 P's for Prosperity, Forgive Your Way to Prosperity, and Create Your Self-Manifesting Vision Board. So it's always a joy to be here. Every week, we look at different aspects of prosperity, because prosperity is more than just money and stuff. We may look at spiritual prosperity, where we have and keep the peace that passes all understanding. We may look at professional prosperity, where, in the words of Florence Scovel Shinn, we have a wonderful job with wonderful pay, where we provide a wonderful service in a wonderful way. We may look at physical prosperity, where our energy and our physical body are aligned in such a way that our energy and our physical bodies operate optimally for our soul's purpose. We, of course, may look at the prosperity of our good, where we have enough good in our lives that our lives work easily and effortlessly. We may look at relationship prosperity, where we cultivate such a deep inner consciousness of unconditional loving support for ourselves, also known as self-love, that our outer relationships, which are a reflection of our inner relationship with ourselves, that our outer relationships reflect loving support. And of course, a prosperity of all the good, such as money and stuff, that will bring us peace and joy. So we're going to get at it tonight from a new angle, never explored in the 3 years of doing this show. We're going to look at post-traumatic prosperity. Post-traumatic prosperity. Now, you've heard a lot of post-traumatic stress, where someone has to work through the effects of their trauma, where someone has to work through their emotional trauma because they're in shock or denial or fear or a sense of hopelessness, where they have to work through their physical trauma, where they're always aroused or hypervigilant because of a prior trauma, or the cognitive effects, where they're having intrusive thoughts or they can't let go of the thoughts about the trauma because they keep reverberating in their minds? Well, they are in post-traumatic stress. And what it is difficult to really embrace is that there could be prosperity on the other side of trauma. However, we have to get through the effects of the trauma in order to find the prosperity on the other side. So that's what we're going to discuss tonight, post-traumatic prosperity. So let's start with a definition of trauma. Trauma is a deep emotional or psychological wound or response to distressing incidents that can shatter one's sense of security. I'm going to repeat that. Trauma is a deep emotional or psychological wounding as a result of a distressing event that shatters an individual's sense of security. And the point I would like to emphasize there is that something that shatters your security, your peace, your sense of safety, your sense of who you are, your sense of who the world is. And it doesn't have to be an acute trauma or a specific incident. It can be chronic trauma where you're repeatedly exposed to something, like being repeatedly exposed to an alcoholic or abusive father, or complex trauma where something happened that was so out of your control that you, like childhood neglect or childhood abuse, that you just felt so trapped and powerless that you don't know how to get out and so hopeless. So understanding what trauma is, understanding how it manifests, we can get through it. And there is prosperity on the other side. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to discuss how we can move through trauma to get to post-traumatic prosperity so we can get to the prosperity on the other side. And my special guest tonight is one of your favorite guests as well. Author, healer, spiritual teacher, and channel, the Reverend Daniel Neusom, who serves as the counselor and he serves as the minister of the Sacred Light Fellowship. Good evening, Daniel.
Good evening, my dear brother. How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm amazing. Thank you for asking.
We're so glad to have you back. Thank you for joining us tonight to discuss this extremely important topic.
My pleasure.
Yes. So I want to spend as much time with this as possible, and I want to collect questions or comments from those who are here. So I'm going to invite everyone who is here to let us know you're here, say hello, and if you have any questions or anything that comes up for you, just let us know. So one of the things I noticed, I've counseled literally thousands of people over the decades, many of whom have had traumatic experiences that have shattered their worldview or shattered their sense of self. And one of the things that I found is that they all carry a trauma story. Has that been your experience as well, Reverend Daniel Neusom?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. And have you noticed that at times there is a great deal of focus on their trauma story that keeps them from getting beyond the effects of the trauma?
Yeah, I have.
Yes. Yes. So let's discuss that. And let's discuss that phenomena so we can all recognize it when it happens to us. And then let us discuss how we can get past our trauma story to get to the prosperity on the other side. And let's discuss what could be prosperity on the other side. First of all, why do you think people get stuck in their trauma story, Reverend Daniel?
This is a really, really deep issue, obviously. And I'd like us to look at it from a spiritual, metaphysical perspective.
Yes.
That all of us who are currently in human form are, we've come to the earth to evolve out of the ego consciousness. And the ego consciousness is really what keeps us in unhappiness and lack and misery. And it keeps us from feeling and really experiencing that we are one with God and one with each other. And it keeps us actually from having a direct experience of God. So every soul on the planet, when they're planning their incarnation, because I certainly believe in life before birth, the overarching goal or desire is to evolve out of the ego consciousness. Now, the tricky thing is the ego is insane. So if you've had a trauma, the part of yourself that is ego wants to keep you in an insane way in the unhappiness and turmoil and the victimization of the trauma. The trauma is ultimately meant to be a catalyst for the healing of your soul, to
But
guide
if
you.
I hear you, the
Mhm.
ego wants to hold on to the trauma because the ego believes that it is the trauma, and the ego fears that if it releases the trauma, it will be annihilated as the God self moves in.
Yes,
Am I hearing you correctly?
you're hearing me so correctly. And as when you're a human being and you've experienced a devastating event or you've experienced trauma, there is the impulse inside is to reach for higher consciousness, to reach for God. Dear God, please help me. And that is actually very positive. So trauma is actually calling you to join with God, to actually work on with and through the issues as a soul that you brought to the earth to transform. But
Yes.
getting stuck in it is it's tricky because the ego insanely doesn't want you to do that. It just wants you to be angry and victimized and to suffer.
Yes. So let's cast a little bit more light for our guests on the role of the soul in getting an overview and planning a life with spiritual guides and teachers with the God force that would include trauma. It's like, wait a minute, why would my soul do that? So let's drill down on that a little bit more so we can understand this more deeply from a metaphysical perspective. Is
Yes.
our soul simply punch drunk? Or does our soul and says, oh, I can do that. It's going to be easy. Or does our soul have the perspective of this life, as A Course in Miracles says, this is an illusion. This is a dream. I'm going to have this dream, and it is not who I am really. So I can do this because I'm an eternal being, and this is just 70 years. I can get through a little this and a little that. What is your perspective on this, Reverend Daniel?
So the soul is aware of the parts of itself that are not yet vibrating in unconditional love. And the
Yes.
soul is like pulled toward union with God. The soul wants to become all loving towards self and toward all of life. So when you're born and the veil of forgetfulness overtakes you, and you're born into this world that's guided by the ego consciousness, a trauma is a way of really getting your attention, really causing you to look inward, really inspiring you to search for higher consciousness, to search for love, to search for healing, to search for relief, which your human ego consciousness cannot give to you. It is only the divine self that can heal you. So a soul might plan to have traumatic experiences as a way of motivating the self to come into union with God and to heal the stuff from past lives.
Yes, much of which has accumulated in this life, and we brought it in like baggage in order to work it out, because this may be the first time in eons where there has been enough light on the earth to work it out.
Yes.
And so we bring it now in this age of miracles.
Amen.
So that helps me to understand, and I'm sure it helps our guests also to understand why our soul might choose trauma as a catalyst for healing and growth. It also helps us understand why trauma may be so hard to shake, because the ego wants to hold on to it. So let's then move to some ways that we can support the ego in releasing its trauma and support the soul in using the trauma for our ultimate soul healing and our ultimate soul transformation. So we're going to do that, but we're going to go to break first to give our viewers an opportunity to ask questions about this as well, because our viewers may have some questions on this. So when we come back, we're going to look at how to convince the ego to release trauma and how to allow the soul to move us through the trauma and get us to the growth and the post-traumatic prosperity that God and the soul wills. So we'll be back after a break here on the New Thought Media Network.
Please help us say thank you to all of our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Center for Spiritual Living United Life, Sunshine Cathedral, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Universal Joy Center, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Home Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. On behalf of New Thought Media Network, thank you, and please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, come be you. Come expand your spiritual journey. Join us for Just the Talk, Sundays, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Experience Unity Kitchener and Ottawa. Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Unity of Garden Park, New Thought Philadelphia, the Sunshine Cathedral, Unity of Savannah, and the Om Center for Spiritual Living. Come unleash your spiritual potential with New Thought Media Network.
What would Louise say? Join us every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Hosted by Reverend Martine Bernard. Explore the wisdom of Louise Hay. Brought to you by New Thought Media Network. Dive into Louise's teachings. Experience healing and empowerment. Reverend Martine shares insights. Connect with a contemporary audience. Unlock your potential. Transform your life with love. Embrace positivity and healing. Join our vibrant community. Ready to join us? Let's spread love and wisdom together. Please like, share, and subscribe. Only on New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
And we're back here on the New Thought Media Network with the miracle of prosperity. And today we're discussing post-traumatic prosperity, how we can get to the prosperity on the other side of trauma. And my special guest is the Reverend Daniel Neusom, mystic, healer, writer, teacher, and of course, dear friend. So what we've discussed so far is what is trauma and why do we tend to get stuck in trauma. And what we're going to discuss now is some of the ways, some of the tools, and some of the techniques we can use to get to the other side of trauma where prosperity awaits us. And I want to tee this up by quoting Carl Jung, the psychologist, who basically said, when we are a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. And the implication of that is when we define ourselves by our trauma, we perceive everything outside of us as a replication of that trauma and a trigger for that trauma. And we get stuck in these trauma loops where our trauma keeps magnifying and intensifying because it takes over our consciousness. And it is therefore important for us to reframe things in order to move through our trauma. So let's look at some spiritual tools and techniques that can help us to do that, to get out of that trauma loop. And one of the ones that I'd like for us to begin with, Reverend Daniel Neusom, is if you can discuss how a direct experience of God can overcome, overshadow, heal, and transform the discordant energetic patterns that have been resident within us when we are in trauma.
Of course. This takes me back to my very first session with my spiritual teacher, Ann White, and I was 21 years old, and I was a hot mess. Oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
Ann had worked with Eva Pierrakos over several years and had become an amazing channel. And the pure God light that came through her reached me in the first session. And when you experience that light, which is actually pure love and pure joy,
Mm-hmm.
you realize that there truly is something beyond the earth plane. There is something beyond your human consciousness. And when you taste that,
Mm-hmm.
you actually want more of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that first session, which exposed me to the direct experience of the energy of God, that was just the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But it was enough to motivate me to want to transform all of the soul sickness within me. So if you're dealing with trauma, it's going to hopefully cause you to have a real serious conversation with God, like a real deep, God, help me. I don't know where to go or what to do or how I'm going to get through this. And when that kind of prayer comes from the soul, God answers, and she will make herself known to you. And that begins your direct experience of God. I mean, I asked my teacher, Anne, I said, well, what is this energy that I feel? What's going on? And she said, well, the chakras of your body have opened and the energy of God is coming through.
Okay. So if some of our viewers are stuck in a trauma loop, one of the things you're recommending, it sounds like, is taste the light of God. and it will offer you an alternative. And
Yes.
that, and if the taste of the light of God feels so good, it will convince your ego that, that the taste of God is sweeter than the comfort and the familiarity of the bitterness of the sin. Would that be accurate?
Yes, it would be accurate. I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I don't know whether it's my computer or yours, but that would definitely be accurate. And the other thing I want to say is that a skill we have to acquire is the ability to listen to ourselves and observe ourselves. So you can acquire the skill of knowing when you are in your ego and when you're
Mm-hmm.
stuck in your negative story,
Mm-hmm.
and you can catch yourself. Like I have actually a client, and the guides will give this person a particular statement like,
Mm-hmm.
you are the holy, beloved, innocent daughter of God, and you deserve everything. And
Mm-hmm.
this person will at times then start talking about how terrible they are and the mistakes they've made and this and that and the other. And they'll say, no, no, please just stop that and focus on loving yourself by declaring that truth. So
Yeah.
you get what I'm saying. It's you just
Yes.
have to pull yourself back
Yes.
from getting caught in the loop of your story.
Yes. In other words, the ego and the trauma has fed you a series of lies. You are not good enough. There is something wrong with you. You did this to yourself,
Yeah.
etc. And you have to expose yourself not only to the light of God and its sweetness as an incentive to move past the trauma, but you also have to continually make a choice for the truth of God instead of the lies of the ego.
Yes.
Where the lies of the ego feel contracting, the lies of the ego feel bad, the lies of the ego feel critical and distressing and scary and trigger things unlike love.
Yes.
Where the truth of God elicits a sense of hope. The truth of God elicits a sense of peace. The truth of God triggers a part of us that knows that it can transcend whatever it is that we are working with. And so this sounds like a binary choice. And A Course in Miracles is basically as complex, as thick, and as dense as the book can be with all its language. It's basically saying to us, you have a binary choice. You can choose to be in the ego and its perspective, or you can choose to be in your God self and its perspective. And all of the words and all of the aspects of A Course in Miracles boil down to that binary choice. And it encourages us to make the choice for the truth of God. That also entails the truth of our true identity versus the false ego, which is a way of moving out of the trauma. Now, you mentioned this in your earlier response, how the woman was so enthralled by her mistakes, her past, and her ego's labels. Can you tell us a little bit more about how choosing the identity as the God self, which is what you were introducing to her, can you tell us a little bit more of how that can help move us out of the trauma loop?
Absolutely. So one of the things I've noticed that spirit will do when I'm doing a session with someone is they'll say, we want you to remember a moment of happiness or peace or joy or fulfillment, and compare and contrast that to how you feel when you focus in the story of your pain and suffering. And you have the choice which feels better to you. So if you constantly remind yourself of the the moments, even if it's just moments when you felt God, or the moments when you've had happiness and peace and joy in your life, and you get clear, I want more of that. Focusing on this trauma is not going to give me more of that. Focusing on the truth of God, whether I'm experiencing it directly in meditation or hearing a wonderful minister like Reverend Dr. Webb, give a talk, or joining a class or participating in a meditation, that's going to heal me. That's going to help me. But this past story is just keeping me where I really don't want to be. There is a kind of delicious, perverse pleasure people have in their pain and suffering. But when you compare that negative pleasure, to the pure pleasure of positive, joyous, fulfilling experiences, there really is no comparison. But it's up to you to always go back to, what do I really want to experience? I can't change what happened to me.
Yes.
I cannot change that, but what am I going to do moving forward?
Yes. Let's talk about that just a little bit more. Let's talk about how the fleeting moments may seem to be the illusion, where the truth of the trauma seems real because it has had a more pervasive effect on our energy, on our patterning, and it has been deeply imprinted into us versus the fleeting moment of joy or the fleeting moment of God, and what we can do to make it so that we want that fleeting moment more than we want the muck and the mire of the trauma that we are in. Can you speak to that, Reverend Daniel?
Yeah, everything is always about asking questions. So going into meditation and asking, what caused that fleeting moment? Where did that come from? How did I open to that? And the answer is going to come to you if you ask those deep questions. The answer may not come all at once, but it will come. And also being willing to accept the spiritual teaching that I'm creating everything I experience. So if that's true, and I let in that moment of joy, I must be able to let in more moments of joy.
Yes.
And if I can let more moments of joy in, why couldn't I let
all moments of joy
joyous life in?
Yes.
And the other part of it, Jim, is faith.
Yes.
Like just somewhere inside, having faith that God is love.
Yes.
And that you wouldn't be here on the earth without a way out of your pain and drama. You wouldn't be, if God is love, there must be a way for me to heal.
Yes. And those fleeting moments can be sources of faith, because those fleeting moments where we have experienced the purest, truest, most liberating, and most powerful experience of God, they give us faith and they can draw us forward. And we must want that more than we want to be stuck in the mire. Now, there are some techniques for developing this faith, and there are some techniques for moving through the trauma to get to the prosperity on the other side, such as behavioral therapy, coaching, EMDR, emotional release, visualization. So let's chat about some of those things that we can do to help us move to the other side of trauma.
Okay.
Let's talk about emotional release, since we like that one a lot.
Yeah, that's so key. So if we understand that our emotional body is our magnetic center, it magnetizes to us everything we experience. based on the images and impressions that are there in the magnetic center, and often trauma has locked in negative images, negative impressions. So as part of one's spiritual therapy, as part of one's process of transformation, either with a therapist or a coach, giving yourself permission to actually feel the pain of your trauma, or feel the rage that your trauma has triggered within you, and let it out with your voice and your body, and you're moving it out of your magnetic center. And you are literally changing your life, because you're moving the pattern that locked in your magnetic center that actually blocks you from prosperity. And here I'm not talking about just monetary prosperity, but the prosperity of peace and joy and fulfillment.
Yes.
So when you emotional release will clear the emotional body. And the channel who I learned about emotional release by studying a woman whose name is Shonda Rohan, who channeled the right use of will books. The Spirit of God, and as it manifested through this channel, said, when your emotional body is healed and clear, the only problem you will have is what to do with all of the resulting abundance. When your emotional body is cleared and healed, the only problem you will have is what to do with all of the resulting abundance. So even though trauma is horrible, if you really take the steps of healing it, it is going to lead you to heaven, actually, to prosperity, to abundance.
Yes. So let's look at this a little bit more from the energetic perspective. When we are carrying energy, we vibrate with that energy. When we vibrate with that energy, we vibrate towards its reflection in our outer world, and its reflection vibrates towards us, for everything is magnetic and everything is electromagnetic energy. When we interrupt the existing energy pattern through emotional release, when we change the energy pattern through emotional release, we release the old energy, we release the old vibration, we release the old programming, we release the energetic and magnetic resonance of that old. And we then flood that void with the light, the grace, the love, the bliss, the peace, the power, and the presence of God. We are vibrating differently. We are magnetized differently. And we are magnetizing loving good to flow to us. And we are magnetizing ourselves to be drawn to loving good, because the part of us that was magnetized by the trauma is now magnetized by the peace and the joy and the light, as the darkness of the trauma has been released. So emotional release is an aspect of it. Working with a therapist to talk it through, to talk it out, can be a part of it. Visualizing. We talked earlier, or we alluded to having something to run to instead of something to run from. Visualizing, what would your life be without the trauma, and allowing the Holy Spirit to cause you to see its will for you for perfect happiness. And getting a vision of that happiness can be an incentive to draw you out of the trauma and into the bliss of God that God wills for you. So these are a number of different techniques that can be used. You can work with them on your own. It is usually helpful to work with a facilitator of any sort to facilitate this process and hold the space spiritually for you. So we're going to look at what is the prosperity on the other side of the trauma, and we're going to then look at some of the comments that have been made. For example, Jane Batt at 8:23, when we come back from our break here on the New Thought Media Network.
Come expand your spiritual journey. Join us for Just the Talk, Sundays, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time, Experience Unity Kitchener and Ottawa. Center for Spiritual Living Midtown. Center for Spiritual Living Denver. Unity of Garden Park. New Thought Philadelphia. The Sunshine Cathedral. Unity of Savannah. And the Ohm Center for Spiritual Living. Come unleash your spiritual potential with New Thought Media Network. New Thought Media Network proudly presents the Science of Mind Saturday Conversations. Learn more about the Science of Mind philosophy, faith, and way of life. Join our team of experts for a weekly deep dive discussion. Come study the science of mind, chapter by chapter, and resources from the Science of Mind archives. Plan to join us every Saturday, 9 a.m. Mountain Time. Only on the New Thought Media Network.
And we're back here on the New Thought Media Network and the Miracle of Prosperity, and we're discussing moving through trauma and post-traumatic prosperity. For there is truly prosperity on the other side of our trauma. Our task is to allow ourselves to move out of the trauma and into the prosperity that awaits us. So we have talked about what trauma is. We have talked about some of the techniques that we can use to move out of the trauma. And in the third segment, I'd like for us to discuss the prosperity on the other side of the trauma. And let's do some case studies about what prosperity could be on the other side of the trauma. And let's start with a case study regarding relationships. What if our early relationships, such as those with a parent that we distrusted because their love was inconsistent, caused us to distrust love in relationships? And what if we vibrated or resonated with that magnetic programming? And so we drew to us relationships with untrustworthy people. What, Reverend Neusom, do you think would be the result of healing that trauma?
You know, I love to just go deep. So I had the trauma of being born to an emotionally unstable mother. And the majority of my relationships, the majority of my intimate, loving, sexual relationships in this life have been with men, but I was recreating the experience with my mother in these relationships. So I would always be attracted to men who were not completely available to me, and I felt very neglected by my mother, like I wasn't important to her. Everything else was more, even though I know this is not true, but this is what I felt. This is what locked into my energy. So I was always attracted to people who their love was unreliable. Yes. And ultimately I would always experience being abandoned. Mm-hmm. And as I healed, I'm going to say, the trauma of my relationship with my mother, I met someone 17 years ago who was completely outside of the past patterning. And the prosperity is being married to someone who just loves and accepts me unconditionally and who is always available, always present. And then some. Like, this person is literally an angel, and I'm not exaggerating. So that's some prosperity after the trauma. The other thing that I experienced, my mother always lived beyond her means, and there was always, there was never financial ease or security. And I found myself during various periods of my life, not living a financially healthy life. I'm going to put it that way, but working on the trauma of, my childhood with my mother and the observation of all of the pain and struggle that money put her through and thus put me through. I'm now in a place where money is not even an issue anymore. There is just such abundance. I'm like, who is this? It's me, but it's so, my situation is so transformed that it's almost unbelievable. So the case studies have to do with me.
Okay. I wasn't going to say that. So there you have several examples of how moving through trauma can get you to the prosperity on the other side. We're going to do some more of these, but we had a comment from Reverend Jamie Batt at 8:23 that I would also like for us to discuss. In my communities, we are able to co-create a lot of healing and harmony. I feel frustrated that these energies seem to not yet break through into global peacemaking, patient, and trust the process. I need to be patient and trust the process. So what guidance do we have? And let's put this in the context of earth trauma. The trauma, every trauma has at its origin a belief in separation. A belief in separation from God, a belief in separation from God as love, a belief in separation from God as provision, a belief in separation from God as comfort, safety, and security. So when we feel this collective and individual separation, we feel vulnerable. We feel scared. We feel like we don't have enough. We feel like there isn't enough. We feel like we have to compete for enough. Hence tribes and factions and wars. And hence our internal conflicts with ourselves for believing we are not enough and believing we are separate, and thus believing that we are sinful prodigal children and we must be punished and we must work our way back to God. It all begins with the false idea that we are separate. And so what ultimately we want to regain and remember is the consciousness of unity, where we remember we were never separated from God. God was never separated from us. We were not evicted from the Garden of Eden, and God did not abandon us. God is with us. God is through us. God is as us. God is us, and we are God. We are emanations. We are elaborations. We are expansions and expressions of God's light, and we are not separate. So that consciousness is one that we cultivate in many communities. And Reverend Jane's frustration might be that consciousness that we have cultivated in certain communities and within many aspects of ourselves, that consciousness has not yet taken over the planet. So, Reverend Daniel Neusom, what can we all do to support the propagation of the consciousness of unity? And what can we do to withdraw from the creative energy of the earth any consciousness that we may still have of divisiveness, of victimhood that has traumatized us so?
The Reverend Jane has actually, I want to pull the question up again. She's actually answered a large part of the question herself,
Okay.
that we have to have patience and trust the process. So I'm going to go back to what A Course in Miracles says. The outcome is as certain as God. And in our limited human consciousness, with its limited perspective, we really don't know what divine right timing is. We really don't know what's going on energetically underneath the surface. What we do know, and especially those of us who are in spiritual communities and who do experience this amazing light that comes through us and to us, what we do know is that light is affecting the collective human consciousness. It can't do anything other than that. Where is it going?
Right.
You know, it's being fed into the energy field of the earth. It's affecting all forms of life on the earth. It's affecting the human consciousness. And when we look at the progress that we have made throughout all of human history, I mean, when I saw, and it was very, it's very disappointing on one hand, but on the other hand, when I saw Barack Obama's second inauguration and the unity that was exhibited there, and when gay marriage became legal and all of these wonderful things opened up, we're in a contraction right now, but that's part of the process. We expand and we contract, and what's not healed within us, and I'm talking about collectively, I'm talking about in this country, I'm talking about in the world, comes up.
Mhm.
We've got to just keep bringing in more light, and we have to know that that process is what is moving all of us into the consciousness of heaven. But what we can do individually is always ask ourselves each day in our meditation, am I at peace? And don't lie to yourself. If there's a part of you that isn't at peace, work on it with God to bring you into peace, so that when you show up, when you leave your house, when you go out into the world, you go out there with the willingness to love every single person you encounter. That's what we can do.
Yes, by working with the idea, God, I let you in to this place within me that does not feel peace. Cause me to feel peace where I have felt upset. Cause me to know of your presence and your love where I have felt separated from it, and it has taken this form. God, I let you in. That was one of the themes of Reverend Daniel's wonderful service today.
Thank you.
And I want to talk a little bit more about the physics of contraction and expansion. When in physics class, what happens with an explosion? With an explosion, there's an explosion of energy. And that energy is energy that is hotter and thus less dense and vibrating more rapidly than the air around it. So what does it do? It expands into the air around it that is vibrating less rapidly, and it cools. And when it cools to the degree that the air around it that is vibrating less rapidly overtakes it, it contracts because it cools in this contraction. But what happens with this contraction? This contraction then causes that vibrational energy to be raised again because it's more friction. And then it expands again. Then it contracts again. Then it expands again, but it always gets bigger. What this means is that, yes, our process is repetitive because each time there's an expansion and a contraction, there is a healing at a deeper level. So when we understand this, we will not get frustrated, and we can remember what Reverend Daniel Neusom cited, A Course in Miracles, Lesson 292, a happy outcome to all things is assured. So that's one of the ways that we can discuss that. So thank you, Reverend Jane Batt, for bringing up such a wonderful and insightful question as the earth moves through its collective trauma and what we can do to get to the prosperity on the other side. So what a wonderful discussion we've had tonight. And I want to thank you, Reverend Daniel Neusom, for being such a wonderful guest. And I want to thank all of our viewers as well. So Reverend Daniel Neusom, what are you working on these days?
I'm working on enjoying my life, enjoying every moment and breath of my life. I'm actually cutting back on a lot of my work and my schedule. But the thing that when I am working, it is just amazing. I'm doing private transformational sessions with people. I just love doing that. And we've got just amazing stuff happening at the Sacred Light Fellowship. Just to make things, oh, look, there's our website, sacredlightfellowship.org. Thank you for putting that up there. And to find out about my work, just go to my website, danielneusom.com. And I am going to leave it at that. Just know that the Holy Spirit of God in the angelic realm are coming through my channel and other teachers and ministers at the Sacred Light Fellowship. So any class, any service you attend is going to be very transformative. What are you working on, my brother, Reverend Dr. Jim Webb?
Well, I've got a new toy. Would you like to hear about my new toy?
I would love to hear about your new toy.
My new toy is my new website. I've totally revamped it. I have a number of new blog entries. And one of the most fascinating aspects of my new website is that I brought back a character that many of you remember and that so many of you loved. I brought back Sakethia McQueen. Sakethia McQueen is a composite character. She's funny as hell. She is always getting herself into a pickle or a jam. And each time she gets herself into a pickle or a jam, she will then remember a lesson in A Course in Miracles that helps her get out of that pickle or a jam. So one by one, every lesson in A Course in Miracles, Sakethia lives it. They're the adventures of Sakethia McQueen. They're part of my new website and my blog. So go to my new website, and then on the right corner, you'll see the word blog. Click that. You'll see not only the adventures of Sakethia McQueen, and I add a new episode pretty much every other day because I've got so many now that they're going to turn into a book. But every other day or so, I add another episode of Sakethia. But you'll also find there some written reflections. The Sakethia is in the middle in the pink blouse. You'll find sermons, you'll find written reflections, you'll find articles, and many of them are quite topical writings. Many of them are on spiritual tips and spiritual tools. Some of them are other things like understanding what is happening in our world through a political lens. Through a spiritual lens. Understanding politics through a spiritual lens. Understand how we relate to others through a spiritual lens. So what you'll find there is some of the stuff that we see on the news. How can we look at this spiritually, and how can we interpret this spiritually? So you'll find a lot of wisdom, a lot of help, a lot of support, and Sakethia McQueen on my blog, which is part of my new website. So that's what I'm working on these days, Reverend Daniel. Thank you for asking. And I want to thank everyone for being here tonight as we've discussed trauma and post-traumatic prosperity, the prosperity on the other side of trauma, here on the New Thought Media Network. Thank you and good night.